My name is Margaret Thompson, and I'm 28 years old. I stood frozen in my childhood home's living room as my parents delivered the cruelest betrayal of my life. "We've given your wedding fund to Ashley," my mother announced, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "She deserves it more. She's always been the good daughter." The $50,000 my grandmother left specifically for my wedding, gone. Given to my younger sister who'd never worked a day in her life. My fiancé Daniel stepped forward, his voice deadly calm, cutting through my shock. "You have 72 hours to return every penny, or you'll discover what happens when you steal from my future wife." Before I share what happened next, tell me where you're watching from today. If you've ever dealt with family betrayal or favoritism, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice and redemption. Trust me, you'll want to hear how Daniel brought my entire family to their knees in just 3 days. Growing up as the older daughter in the Thompson household meant living in perpetual shadow. Ashley came into the world when I was 3, after my parents suffered multiple miscarriages. They called her their miracle baby, and from that moment forward, I became invisible. Every achievement I earned was dismissed, while Ashley's mere existence was celebrated like a national holiday. I remember the day Ashley decided she wanted my bedroom when she turned 7. I'd spent months painting murals on the walls, creating my perfect 13-year-old sanctuary. One afternoon, I came home from school to find my belongings stuffed into boxes in the hallway. "Ashley needs the bigger room," my mother Linda explained without a hint of apology. "You're older, you can handle the change." That became the pattern of our lives. Ashley wanted, Ashley received, and I was expected to smile and accept it. My academic achievements meant nothing in our house. When I became valedictorian of my high school class, my parents missed my speech because Ashley had a dance recital the same night. "She'd be devastated if we weren't there," my father Robert explained weakly. "You understand, don't you, Margaret? You're so independent." I gave my valedictory address to an auditorium of strangers while my family cheered for Ashley's mediocre tap routine across town. The acceptance letter from MIT should have been my moment of triumph. I'd earned a full scholarship through years of late-night studying and perfect grades. My mother's response: "Well, I suppose that's nice. Don't let it go to your head." The same week, Ashley got accepted to community college after barely graduating high school, and my parents threw her a party that lasted all weekend. "Our baby's going to college," they gushed, while my MIT acceptance letter lay forgotten on the kitchen counter. Only one person in my family ever saw my worth: Grandmother Rose. She was my father's mother, a sharp-eyed woman who built her own successful business in an era when women were expected to stay home. She watched the family dynamics with growing disgust, often pulling me aside after particularly blatant displays of favoritism. "Don't let them dim your light, sweetheart," she'd whisper, pressing secret $20 bills into my palm. "You're worth 10 of them." The summer I turned 16, Grandmother Rose asked me to help organize her files. As we worked in her study, she suddenly gripped my hand. "I'm setting something aside for you," she said, her eyes fierce with determination. $50,000 for your wedding day. It'll be in my will, protected and earmarked specifically for you. Your parents can't touch it for anything else." I protested that it was too much, but she shook her head firmly. "You'll need something that's truly yours. Something they can't give away to Ashley on a whim." As I grew older and more independent, my relationship with my parents deteriorated further. Every boundary I set was seen as rebellion, every achievement viewed as showing off. Meanwhile, Ashley perfected the art of manipulation. She developed mysterious illnesses whenever attention shifted away from her, burst into tears at the slightest criticism, and spin elaborate tales of how difficult her life was despite never facing a real challenge. I met Daniel Chin at a tech conference in Boston when I was 25. I was presenting a software solution I developed, and he was in the audience, running one of the fastest-growing startups in the industry. He approached me afterward, initially to discuss business, but our conversation flowed into dinner, then long walks through the city. Daniel came from nothing, building his empire through determination and brilliant strategy. He understood what it meant to fight for everything you had. "Your family sounds toxic," he said bluntly after I'd shared another story of Ashley's manipulations. "Why do you still visit them?" It was a question I couldn't fully answer. Maybe it was hope that one day they'd see me, really see me. Or maybe it was just the stubborn desire to prove I hadn't been broken by their indifference. When I brought Daniel home to meet my parents, their reception was arctic. My mother's eyes scanned his designer suit with suspicion, while my father barely managed a handshake. But when Ashley walked in with her latest boyfriend, Jake, an unemployed man covered in questionable tattoos who reeked of marijuana, my parents lit up like Christmas trees. "Jake's an artist," Ashley explained his unemployment. "He's finding himself." My parents nodded sympathetically while treating Daniel, a self-made millionaire who employed hundreds of people, like he was beneath them. Grandmother Rose passed away 2 years ago, leaving behind a legacy of strength and the promise she'd made to me years before. The will reading was a study in family dynamics. Ashley showed up late, playing games on her phone while the lawyer read through the bequests. When he reached the wedding funds, $50,000 for me and $50,000 for Ashley, specifically designated for our weddings only, Ashley's head snapped up with sudden interest. "The funds are to be held in trust," the lawyer explained carefully, "with Robert and Linda Thompson as trustees. The money can only be released for documented wedding expenses when each granddaughter is engaged to be married." The language was clear, the intent unmistakable. Grandmother Rose had tried to protect the money from my parents' favoritism. She just hadn't anticipated how far they'd go to circumvent her wishes. Daniel proposed to me 6 months later on the beach at sunset, with a ring he'd designed himself. It was perfect, intimate, just the two of us, exactly how I'd dreamed. When we began planning our wedding, I approached my parents about accessing the wedding fund. The resistance was immediate and puzzling. "Well, we need to think about the best way to handle this," my mother hedged. "These things are complicated." Every vendor meeting became a battle. When I found the perfect venue, my parents claimed it was too expensive, despite the fund being more than sufficient. When I selected a photographer, they insisted we needed 3 quotes first. Meanwhile, I noticed they never questioned any expense when Ashley wanted something. Her sudden interest in designer handbags coincided suspiciously with my engagement. The red flags multiplied when Ashley announced her latest business venture, selling essential oils through what was obviously a pyramid scheme. "I just need a small investment to get started," she told our parents over dinner. "Maybe 30,000? I'll pay it back triple within 6 months, I promise." I watched in disbelief as my parents nodded thoughtfully, not mentioning that Ashley still owed them money from her last 5 failed ventures. My cousin Emma worked at the bank where my parents held the trust accounts. Federal regulations prevented her from sharing specific information, but her worried expression when I mentioned the wedding fund spoke volumes. "Just be careful, Margaret," she whispered at our grandfather's birthday party. "Make sure you document everything." Her warning sent chills down my spine. Late one evening, while helping my mother find her reading glasses, I stumbled upon bank statements in her desk drawer. The wedding fund account showed withdrawal after withdrawal, 10,000 here, 15,000 there, all transferred to another account. My hands shook as I photographed the evidence with my phone. When I confronted my parents the next morning, their gaslighting was immediate and brutal. "I don't know what you think you saw," my mother said coolly, "but you're clearly confused. That money is safely invested for your future." When I mentioned the withdrawals, she turned vicious. "How dare you snoop through my private papers? After everything we've done for you? You've always been so selfish, Margaret. Success isn't everything. Your sister has struggled while you've had every advantage." My father, as always, took the path of least resistance. "Your mother knows best, dear," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "These financial matters are complex. Trust us to handle things appropriately." But I saw the guilt flickering across his face, the way his hands trembled as he reached for his coffee. He knew exactly what they'd done. Everything came to a head on a sunny Sunday afternoon that started like any other family dinner. Emma had risked her job to confirm my worst fears. Through careful investigation and a sympathetic colleague, she'd discovered the truth. The entire $50,000 had been transferred to Ashley's personal account just 3 days before. The wedding fund meant to secure my future had been stolen by my own parents. Daniel and I arrived at my childhood home to find Ashley's car sporting new custom rims. Inside, she lounged on the couch wearing designer clothes I'd never seen before, scrolling through her phone with perfectly manicured nails adorned with real diamonds. The sight of her casual opulence, while wearing jewelry worth more than most people's cars, made my stomach turn. "Oh good, you're here," my mother announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "We have something to discuss as a family." My father sat in his armchair, studying his hands like they held the secrets of the universe. Ashley smirked from the couch, barely containing her glee. The stage was set for their grand reveal, but they had no idea Daniel had already armed us with the truth. "We've made a decision about your grandmother's money," my mother continued, her tone suggesting she was granting me a favor. "After careful consideration, we've determined that Ashley needs it more than you do. She's had so many struggles, while you've been blessed with advantages. The money is hers now. I'm sure you understand." The words hit me like physical blows, each one precisely calculated to inflict maximum damage. My mother's expression remained serene, as if she'd just announced the weather rather than confessing to theft. Ashley's performance began immediately, tears appearing on cue as she clutched a tissue to her chest. "I've struggled so much," she whimpered, watching Margaret have everything while I had nothing. The universe is finally balancing things out. Years of suppressed hurt erupted from deep within me. "That was my wedding fund," I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. "Grandmother Rose left it specifically for my wedding. You had no right." The tears came then, hot and angry, washing away years of trying to be the good daughter, the understanding sister. "How could you do this to me?" "Don't be so dramatic," my mother snapped, her mask of concern slipping. "You have Daniel now. He has more money than he knows what to do with. Why should you get a wedding fund when you don't need it? Ashley deserves a chance at happiness too." The twisted logic, the casual cruelty, the complete dismissal of my feelings, it was everything our relationship had always been, distilled into one horrific moment. That's when Daniel stepped forward. Throughout my breakdown, he'd remained silent, observing, analyzing, planning. Now he moved with the controlled precision that made him formidable in boardrooms across the country. "Interesting perspective," he said, his voice carrying an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "Tell me, when exactly did you decide that theft was an acceptable family value?" My parents laughed, actually laughed, at his words. "You can't steal from family," my father said, finally finding his voice. "We're the trustees. We decided what was best for everyone involved." Ashley nodded eagerly from her perch, adding, "Exactly. It's not theft when parents help their struggling child. Maybe if Margaret wasn't so selfish, she'd understand that." Daniel's smile was predatory, the kind he wore when closing deals that crushed competitors. Fascinating legal theory. "I'm sure the district attorney will be very interested in your interpretation of fiduciary duty." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through documents with practiced ease. "According to my legal team, transferring trust funds designated for one beneficiary to another constitutes criminal breach of trust. The penalties include significant jail time." The color drained from my parents' faces, but Daniel wasn't finished. "You have 72 hours to return every penny to Margaret's rightful account. That's 3 days to undo this theft, or we proceed with criminal charges. And before you consider calling my bluff, understand that I've built my career on following through with promises. I have resources you can't imagine and a particular distaste for people who prey on those they should protect." My mother tried to rally, her voice shrill with false indignation. "How dare you threaten us in our own home? Margaret, control your boyfriend before he says something he'll regret." But I saw the fear creeping into her eyes, the realization that she'd finally encountered someone she couldn't manipulate or dismiss. 72 hours, Daniel repeated calmly. "The clock starts now. And if you're thinking of moving or hiding the money, know that we've already documented everything. Your financial institutions have been notified of potential fraud. Try to run, and things will get significantly worse for all of you." He turned to Ashley, whose tears had dried up remarkably quickly. "That includes you. Receiving stolen funds makes you an accomplice. I hope whatever you bought was worth a criminal record." The moment we left my parents' house, Daniel transformed into the strategic genius who'd built an empire from nothing. His phone became a weapon, each call precisely calculated to tighten the noose around my family's neck. By the time we reached his penthouse apartment, he'd assembled a legal team that made corporate lawyers nervous and set investigators on a trail that would expose every secret my family had tried to hide. "First rule of war," he explained, pulling up documents on multiple screens in his home office. "Know your enemy better than they know themselves." His primary attorney, Richard Sterling, had already reviewed Grandmother Rose's will and trust documents. The findings were damning. Not only had my parents violated their fiduciary duty, but they'd also falsified documents to facilitate the transfer. Each signature was another count of fraud, each lie another year of potential prison time. The private investigator Daniel hired was a former FBI agent named Monica Reeves who specialized in financial crimes. Within hours, she'd uncovered a pattern of behavior that made my stomach turn. Ashley hadn't just received my wedding fund. She'd been systematically draining money from our parents for years, always with elaborate sob stories and manipulated tears. But the investigation revealed something far more sinister lurking beneath her perpetual victim act. "Your sister's boyfriend Jake isn't just some harmless loser," Monica reported during a secure video call. "He's got connections to an identity theft ring operating across 3 states. And guess whose information has been used to open multiple credit cards in the last 6 months?" She slid a report across the digital display. My name, my social security number, my entire identity had been compromised by my own sister. The credit reports showed thousands in debt I'd never incurred, accounts I'd never opened, addresses I'd never lived at. Each fraudulent transaction traced back to purchases matching Ashley's spending patterns. Designer goods, expensive restaurants, luxury services, all charged to credit cards bearing my name. My perfect credit score, built through years of careful financial management, had been systematically destroyed by my sister's greed. Daniel's expression darkened with each revelation. "This isn't just about the wedding fund anymore," he said quietly. "This is systematic criminal behavior. She's been planning this for months, possibly years." His fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing data and building a case that would destroy any defense my family might mount. The businessman who'd fallen in love with me had become an avenging angel, wielding technology and connections like weapons of divine justice. The strategic brilliance of Daniel's approach became clear as he mapped out the pressure points. My father's construction company depended heavily on contracts with 3 major firms, all of whom had partnerships with Daniel's tech empire. A few carefully placed calls expressing concern about Robert Thompson's business ethics would create waves of worry among his partners. Not threats, simply shared concerns among business associates about maintaining high standards of integrity. My mother's entire social identity revolved around her position on the Riverside Charity Foundation Board, an organization that prided itself on financial transparency and ethical leadership. Daniel's research revealed that several board members were already uncomfortable with Linda Thompson's aggressive fundraising tactics. News of her theft from her own daughter would provide the perfect excuse to request her resignation. The charity couldn't afford association with financial impropriety. "Your parents think they're untouchable because they're family," Daniel explained as he organized the evidence. "They're about to learn that actions have consequences, regardless of blood relations. Every choice they've made has created vulnerabilities. I'm simply going to illuminate those weaknesses for the appropriate audiences." His network spanned industries, each connection carefully cultivated over years of business dealings. Now he activated them with surgical precision. Late into the night, we worked side by side, building an airtight case that would leave no room for escape. I struggled with waves of guilt, questioning whether I was being too harsh on my family. Daniel would gently remind me of the facts. They'd stolen $50,000 meant for my future. They'd allowed Ashley to destroy my credit and commit identity theft. They'd chosen favoritism over love, greed over integrity. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. "You've spent your entire life making excuses for them," Daniel said softly, taking my hands in his. "They programmed you to feel guilty for their crimes. But loving someone doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean allowing them to steal from you or destroy your future. You deserve better than what they've given you, and I'll make sure you get it." Within 24 hours of Daniel's ultimatum, our family structure began imploding like a controlled demolition. Extended relatives who'd remained neutral for years suddenly felt compelled to choose sides, and their choices revealed long-hidden resentments and alliances. My phone buzzed constantly with messages ranging from supportive to vitriolic, each one adding another layer to the family drama unfolding in real time. Aunt Catherine, my mother's older sister, led the charge against me with self-righteous fury. "How dare you threaten your parents with legal action?" she screeched through my phone at 6 in the morning. "Family doesn't sue family. Your grandmother would be spinning in her grave knowing you're destroying the family over money. You've always been a selfish girl, Margaret, but this is beyond the pale. That money belongs to whoever needs it most, and that's clearly Ashley." The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. Aunt Catherine had spent years fighting with my mother over their parents' estate, hiring lawyers and dragging the family through court battles over a few $1,000s. But when it came to my $50,000, suddenly family solidarity was paramount. Her hypocrisy was breathtaking, but it paled in comparison to the unexpected support that emerged from my father's side of the family. Uncle James, my father's younger brother, called me privately with a different message entirely. "I've watched your parents favor Ashley for years," he admitted quietly. "Your grandmother Rose used to cry about it. She made me promise to look after you if anything happened, and I failed. But I'm not failing you now. Whatever you need, Margaret, including testimony about what I've witnessed over the years, I'm here." His support was a lifeline in an ocean of family hostility. Ashley, true to form, launched a social media campaign that would have impressed professional propagandists. Her posts painted a picture of a struggling young woman persecuted by her successful, heartless sister. "My own sister is trying to destroy me because I received a gift from our parents," she wrote, carefully omitting that the gift was stolen funds. "She has everything, a rich fiancé, a perfect job, a luxury lifestyle, but she can't stand to see me happy. Please pray for me during this difficult time." The response was immediate and vicious. Ashley's followers, mostly people who knew nothing about our real history, attacked me across every platform. My professional profiles were bombarded with one-star reviews calling me greedy and evil. My personal accounts received death threats from strangers who'd been moved by Ashley's false victim narrative. Daniel's security team had to monitor the threats, taking several seriously enough to involve law enforcement. The situation escalated when my parents attempted to ambush me at my workplace. I was leading a development meeting when security called to inform me that Robert and Linda Thompson were in the lobby, demanding to see their daughter. I watched through security cameras as my mother performed for the gathering crowd, tears streaming down her face as she wailed about her ungrateful daughter who wouldn't even see her own parents. "My baby girl is destroying our family." She cried loud enough for everyone in the building to hear. "We gave her everything, sacrificed everything, and now she's sending lawyers after us. What kind of daughter does that to the people who gave her life?" The security team, well-trained and unimpressed by theatrics, professionally escorted them from the building. But the damage was done. Colleagues who'd respected me now whispered in hallways, wondering what kind of person would sue their own parents. The retaliation came swiftly when Emma, my cousin who'd risked everything to confirm the theft, was suddenly terminated from her position at the bank. The official reason was violation of customer privacy policies, but we all knew the truth. Someone had reported her for helping me, and the bank chose protecting themselves over protecting an employee who'd exposed a crime. The guilt I felt was overwhelming until Daniel stepped in with a solution. "Emma starts at my company tomorrow," he announced, having already arranged everything. Better position, better pay, and a management team that actually values integrity. Your parents think they can hurt everyone who helps you, but they're about to learn that I protect what's mine. And everyone who stands with you is under my protection now." Emma cried when he told her, grateful tears replacing the devastation of losing her job for doing the right thing. The revelation that changed everything came from Ashley's boyfriend, Jake. Apparently unaware that Daniel had him under surveillance, Jake made the mistake of threatening Daniel directly. The text messages were explicit: "Back off the Thompson family or you'll regret it. I know people who can make problems disappear, including you." What Jake didn't realize was that Daniel's security team included former military personnel who took threats against their client very seriously. Within hours, Jake was arrested on outstanding warrants we hadn't even known about. His arrest led to a search of the apartment he shared with Ashley, which uncovered evidence of the identity theft ring Monica had warned us about. The sophisticated operation had victimized dozens of people, but the evidence suggested Ashley wasn't just a bystander. She'd provided personal information about family members, friends, even acquaintances from her various jobs. Anyone whose data she could access became a potential victim. As our family war raged on, unexpected allies emerged from the shadows of our past, each carrying pieces of truth that painted a damning picture of systematic abuse and favoritism. Beverly Morrison, Grandmother Rose's best friend and former business partner, contacted me with information that would prove crucial to our case. She'd been waiting for years for the right moment to honor her friend's final wishes. Rose knew this would happen, Beverly explained over tea in her pristine living room, surrounded by photos of her adventures with my grandmother. "She made recordings, dear. Legal recordings of conversations about the will and her concerns about your parents' favoritism. She wanted evidence in case they tried to subvert her wishes." Beverly produced a small digital recorder and a notarized statement authenticating the recordings. My grandmother's voice, clear and determined, filled the room as she detailed exactly why the wedding funds were protected and her fears about Linda's manipulations. The recordings were devastating. Grandmother Rose described incidents I'd forgotten, patterns of emotional abuse she'd witnessed, and her growing certainty that my parents would try to steal my inheritance. "Margaret has worked for everything she has," my grandmother's voice stated firmly, "while Ashley has been given everything and appreciated nothing. I'm creating this record to ensure my granddaughter receives what I intend for her, regardless of what Linda and Robert might attempt." More support came from unexpected sources. Miss Hamilton, my high school calculus teacher who'd written recommendation letters for MIT, reached out with her own documentation. She'd kept journals throughout her teaching career, and entries dating back to my junior year detailed concerning patterns. Parent-teacher conferences where my parents dismissed my achievements while demanding special accommodations for Ashley. Incidents where they'd blamed me for Ashley's poor performance, suggesting I was showing off and making my sister feel bad. I've watched brilliant students struggle with unsupportive families, MS. Hamilton explained, but your case was particularly troubling. Your parents actively sabotaged your confidence while enabling your sister's worst behaviors. I documented everything because I feared you might need evidence someday. I'm glad that day has finally come. Her meticulous records provided professional third-party validation of the abuse I'd endured. Daniel's family embraced me with the warmth mine had never shown. His mother, Dr. Jennifer Chin, was a force of nature who'd raised 3 successful children while building her own medical practice. She took one look at the evidence against my family and immediately went into protective mode. "You're already our daughter," she declared, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. And we choose you." The Chin family's support wasn't just emotional. They provided resources, connections, and most importantly, a model of what healthy family relationships looked like. Daniel's siblings immediately accepted me, his brother offering tech support for documenting evidence while his sister, a marketing executive, helped counter Ashley's social media campaign with strategic truth-telling that didn't violate any legal boundaries. The most shocking revelations came from Ashley's former friends who began reaching out privately. 3 women who'd been close to my sister in college shared disturbing stories of manipulation, theft, and betrayal. Stephanie Cole revealed how Ashley had stolen her credit card information and run up thousands in charges. When confronted, Ashley had cried and claimed someone must have hacked both their accounts, playing the victim so convincingly that Stephanie had felt guilty for suspecting her. Melissa Young shared how Ashley had destroyed her relationship by secretly messaging her fiancé, claiming Melissa was cheating. The relationship ended, and only months later did the truth emerge when Ashley drunkenly bragged about saving him from that witch. The pattern was consistent. Ashley would infiltrate lives, create chaos, steal what she could, and leave destruction in her wake, always positioning herself as the innocent victim of circumstances. As the 48-hour mark approached, the tide of family opinion began shifting. My parents' friends started distancing themselves, suddenly too busy for their regular social gatherings. Robert's business partners expressed concerns about his judgment and ethics. Linda's position on the charity board became untenable as whispers of financial impropriety spread through their social circles. The kingdom of respectability they'd built was crumbling, and they had no one to blame but themselves. Ashley's desperation grew as her support system evaporated. Jake's arrest had cut off her access to the identity theft ring, and with him went her false sense of invincibility. Former victims were coming forward, connecting dots between their losses and their association with Ashley. Her carefully crafted image as the perpetual victim was being replaced by the truth. She was a predator who used family connections and false tears to destroy lives for profit. The final 24 hours of Daniel's ultimatum unfolded with the intensity of a legal thriller. Each hour brought new developments, desperate attempts at negotiation, and increasingly frantic manipulation from my family. Daniel had installed a countdown clock on his phone, its red numbers a constant reminder of the approaching deadline. We documented every interaction, every threat, every pathetic attempt to avoid consequences. At hour 60, my parents attempted their first negotiation through my father's lawyer, a golf buddy who seemed deeply uncomfortable with the entire situation. "My clients are willing to return half the funds," he proposed nervously. "They feel this would be a fair compromise given the family circumstances." Daniel's response was delivered with the cold precision of a surgical strike. "The full amount plus interest and damages, or we proceed with criminal charges. There's no negotiation." They stole $50,000. They returned $50,000 plus the costs we've incurred investigating their crimes. Hour 65 brought Ashley's most dramatic performance yet. She posted a suicide note on social media, claiming the pressure from her cruel sister had driven her to the edge. Within minutes, concerned followers were calling police for welfare checks. Daniel's investigator Monica was already monitoring the situation and confirmed what we suspected. Ashley was sitting in a coffee shop, very much alive, watching the responses roll in with satisfaction. When police arrived for the welfare check, she played the troubled young woman perfectly, gaining sympathy while painting me as a heartless monster. "This is a felony," Daniel informed our lawyer. "Fake suicide threats for manipulation purposes. Add it to the list." The documentation grew thicker, each desperate act adding years to potential sentences. My parents, who'd initially dismissed Daniel's threats, were beginning to understand the reality of their situation. Their daughter's theatrical manipulation had just added another criminal charge to an already substantial list. At hour 68, my father finally cracked. He showed up at our apartment alone, looking haggard and decades older than his years. Security wouldn't let him up, but through the intercom, his voice broke as he confessed the truth. "Linda made me do it," he whispered. "She's been taking money from everywhere. My business, the charity, our savings. Ashley learned from the best. I tried to stop them, but they threatened to leave me with nothing. I'm sorry, Margaret. I'm so sorry." His revelation opened floodgates of suppressed truth. My mother had been embezzling for years, using her position on various boards to skim funds, always small amounts that wouldn't trigger audits. She'd taught Ashley the art of manipulation, creating a toxic partnership that fed on others' trust and goodwill. My father, weak and complicit, had enabled them rather than risk confrontation. His apology meant nothing without action, but at least the truth was finally emerging. Hour 70 brought Linda's final assault. She arrived at our building with Aunt Catherine and 2 other relatives, attempting to force entry while claiming a family emergency. When security refused them access, Linda exploded into violence, actually attempting to strike the security guard while screaming that I'd stolen her grandchild's inheritance. The delusion was complete. She'd rewritten reality to make herself the victim of the crime she'd committed. The security footage captured everything in high definition. Linda's assault on the guard, her threats against me and Daniel, her admission that she'd taken what was owed to Ashley. Aunt Catherine's attempts to restrain her revealed more than any interrogation could have. Linda, stop. You promised this would work. You said Margaret would cave like she always does. The conspiracy expanded with every hysterical word they shouted. Police arrived to arrest Linda for assault, but Daniel's lawyers were already prepared with additional charges. The fraudulent trust documents, the embezzlement evidence, the conspiracy to commit identity theft. Each document was filed with precision timing. As they led my mother away in handcuffs, she maintained her victim narrative, crying about ungrateful daughters and cruel fate. The woman who'd stolen my inheritance while calling me selfish was finally facing consequences. Hour 71 delivered Ashley's desperate confession. With her mother arrested and her boyfriend in jail, she arrived at the police station claiming she wanted to clear her conscience. The confession was recorded, every word an admission of guilt wrapped in self-pity. She admitted to planning the theft for months, forging documents to make the transfer easier, and yes, stealing identities, including mine. But even in confession, she couldn't accept responsibility. It wasn't fair that Margaret had everything, she whined to the detective. I deserved that money more than she did. Her recording device, hidden in her purse to secretly capture evidence against me, had instead recorded her parents' involvement in the conspiracy. The discussions about how to move the money, how to gaslight me when I discovered the theft, how to use family loyalty as a weapon. Every conversation was another nail in their legal coffin. Ashley, in trying to protect herself, had created the most damning evidence against all of them. As hour 72 arrived, Daniel's legal team filed comprehensive criminal charges against my parents and Ashley. Asset freezing orders prevented them from moving any money, including what remained of my stolen wedding fund. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, already investigating the identity theft ring, expanded their case to include my family's elaborate fraud scheme. What had started as a family dispute over wedding money had revealed a criminal enterprise years in the making. The complete destruction of my family's criminal empire happened with stunning speed once law enforcement took over. FBI agents executing search warrants at my parents' home uncovered evidence of financial crimes dating back over a decade. My mother's charity work had been a front for systematic embezzlement, while Ashley's identity theft operation was more extensive than even Monica's investigation had revealed. They found lists of victims, forged documents, and electronic equipment used to manufacture fake identities. The scope of Ashley's crime shocked even hardened investigators. She hadn't just stolen from family and friends. She'd targeted elderly people at the community center where she'd briefly volunteered, cancer patients from a support group she'd attended claiming to have a tumor she never had, and single mothers from online parenting forums where she'd posed as a struggling mom. Each victim represented months of calculated infiltration, false friendship, and eventual betrayal. The victim count exceeded 50 people across multiple states. My parents' financial house of cards collapsed spectacularly. Forensic accountants discovered that Robert's construction company was built on fraudulent contracts and embezzled funds. He'd been robbing Peter to pay Paul for years, using money from one project to complete another while skimming profits that should have gone to investors. The legitimate business success I'd believed my father had achieved was nothing but smoke and mirrors maintained through creative accounting and outright theft. Linda's embezzlement from the Riverside Charity Foundation made headlines across the state. Charity board member stole from cancer kids, screamed the local newspaper, accompanied by a photo of my mother at last year's fundraising gala. The investigation revealed she'd redirected over $200,000 meant for childhood cancer research into personal accounts. She'd literally stolen from dying children to fund her lifestyle and enable Ashley's spending habits. The media coverage was relentless and damaging. Sophia, my best friend and investigative journalist, had held back during the family drama, but once arrests were made and charges filed, she published a comprehensive expose. Her article, titled "The Golden Child's Criminal Empire: How One Family's Favoritism Led to Federal Charges," went viral within hours. She'd interviewed dozens of victims, reviewed court documents, and painted a picture of systematic criminality hiding behind suburban respectability. My interview with Sophia, conducted in Daniel's office with lawyers present, set the record straight for the first time publicly. I revealed years of emotional abuse, the theft of my wedding fund, and how family favoritism had created a monster in Ashley. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people shared their own stories of toxic family dynamics and financial abuse. The narrative Ashley had crafted on social media crumbled as truth replaced her lies. Ashley's arrest on multiple federal charges became a spectacle when she attempted to flee. Security footage from the airport showed her trying to board a flight to Mexico using a fake ID, one of many she created during her identity theft spree. Federal marshals arrested her at the gate while she screamed about persecution and demanded to speak to media about her wrongful arrest. The woman who'd spent years playing victim couldn't understand why her tears no longer worked as currency. My parents lost everything in rapid succession. The construction company folded within days as partners fled and contracts were canceled. Their house, mortgaged multiple times to cover hidden debts, went into foreclosure. Friends who'd socialized with them for decades suddenly had no availability for golf games or charity lunches. The social status they'd valued above their own daughter's well-being evaporated like morning dew under harsh sunlight. Extended family members who'd supported them scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Aunt Catherine, who'd been so vocal in attacking me, claimed she'd been manipulated by Linda's lies and begged for forgiveness. I had none to offer. These relatives had chosen sides when they thought there would be no consequences. Now they wanted amnesty simply because they'd backed the losing team. Their fair-weather loyalty deserved no reward. Uncle James stood by his promise, testifying about years of witnessed favoritism and financial irregularities. His testimony, combined with Beverly's recordings and Ms. Hamilton's documentation, created an ironclad case that no defense attorney could overcome. Other relatives came forward with their own stories, revealing a pattern of manipulation and theft that stretched back generations. My mother had learned from her own mother, creating a toxic legacy passed from parent to child. The criminal trials moved forward with inevitable momentum. Ashley pled guilty to 37 counts of identity theft and fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence that still meant 15 years in federal prison. At her sentencing, she delivered a rambling statement blaming everyone but herself, me for being successful, our parents for spoiling her, society for creating unrealistic expectations. The judge, unimpressed, noted her complete lack of remorse and imposed the maximum sentence allowed under the plea agreement. My parents' trials were more complex, but equally damning. Linda faced charges ranging from embezzlement to conspiracy to commit fraud. The Charity Foundation alone wanted her imprisoned for life after discovering the full extent of her theft. Children who could have received treatment, research that could have saved lives, all sacrificed for her greed. She was eventually sentenced to 25 years, though her age meant she'd likely die in prison. The woman who'd called me selfish would spend her remaining years in a cell, the ultimate irony of her life choices. Robert received a lighter sentence of 10 years, the court recognizing his role as enabler rather than mastermind. Still, 10 years for a man in his 60s meant he too would likely never see freedom. During his allocution, he broke down completely, admitting he'd failed as a father and husband, chosen the easy path over the right one, and destroyed his family through weakness. His tears were genuine but far too late to matter. Margaret and Daniel's wedding took place on a perfect autumn day, surrounded by the family we'd chosen rather than the one I'd been born into. The venue overlooked the ocean, simple but elegant, exactly what I'd dreamed of before my life exploded into chaos. We used only what we needed from the recovered wedding fund, donating the excess to establish a foundation for victims of family financial abuse. It felt right to transform money tainted by greed into hope for others. Uncle James walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down his weathered face. He'd proven that blood could sometimes transcend toxicity, that family members could choose integrity over blind loyalty. Beverly sat in the front row, clutching a photo of Grandmother Rose, ensuring her spirit witnessed the day she'd tried so hard to protect. Emma stood as my maid of honor, radiant in her new confidence, thriving in her position at Daniel's company where ethics mattered more than connections. Daniel's family filled the groom's side with warmth and genuine celebration. His mother had insisted on hosting the rehearsal dinner, creating an evening filled with laughter, stories, and the kind of family love I'd always craved but never experienced. His siblings had welcomed me completely, inside jokes and shared memories already forming. They showed me daily what healthy family dynamics looked like, teaching through example rather than words. The ceremony itself was intimate and meaningful, our vows reflecting the journey we'd traveled together. Daniel promised not just to love and cherish, but to protect and defend, to be the family I'd never had. I promised to trust in that love, to let go of the survival mechanisms that had kept me guarded for so long. When we kissed as husband and wife, the applause came from people who'd proven their love through actions rather than empty words. During the reception, Beverly stood to read a letter from Grandmother Rose that she'd kept sealed for this day. My grandmother's words, written years before but eerily prescient, brought tears to every eye. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then you've found your way to happiness despite the obstacles placed in your path. You were always the strong one, the one who could see clearly when others chose blindness. I pray the family I leave behind treasures you as I do, but if not, know that you have the strength to build your own family, one based on love rather than blood. Your light was never meant to be dimmed by others' darkness. 1 year later, I was preparing nursery paint samples when fate arranged an unexpected encounter. Shopping for groceries in a store far from our usual neighborhood, I turned a corner to find my father working as a cashier. The man who'd once run a construction company now wore a polyester uniform and a name tag. Our eyes met across the space that felt simultaneously too small and infinitely vast. He'd aged decades in a year, his face carved with lines of regret and hard living. "Margaret," he whispered, his voice broken. I heard you got married. Was it beautiful?" The question hung between us, loaded with everything he'd missed, everything he'd thrown away for favoritism and cowardice. I could have walked away, could have pretended not to see him, but something in his genuine brokenness made me pause. This wasn't manipulation or another plea for money. This was just a father realizing far too late what he'd lost. "It was perfect," I replied simply. The family who chose to love me was there. I saw him flinch at the words, understanding their weight. He started to speak again, possibly to offer another apology or explanation, but I raised my hand gently. "I hope you find peace, Dad." "I really do." They were the truest words I could offer, forgiveness without forgetting, compassion without reconciliation. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. They could only be acknowledged and left in the past. Months later, Daniel's investigator mentioned seeing Linda cleaning offices at night for a commercial cleaning service. The woman who'd stolen from cancer children now emptied trash cans and scrubbed toilets for minimum wage. The charity foundation had ensured she'd never work in nonprofit sectors again, her name blacklisted across the industry. She lived in a small apartment on the wrong side of town, all assets seized to pay restitution to her victims. The queen of suburban society had become invisible, karma delivering justice more thoroughly than any court could have. Ashley's letters from prison arrived sporadically, forwarded through lawyers to maintain my safety. Each one revealed her unchanged nature, still blaming everyone else for her circumstances. Her latest claimed I'd destroyed her life over jealousy, conveniently forgetting the 50-plus victims of her identity theft crimes. I stopped reading them, filing them unopened with my attorney. Some people never learned, never grew, never accepted responsibility. Ashley would spend 15 years behind bars maintaining her victim narrative to anyone who'd listen. The foundation Daniel and I established grew beyond our original vision. We provided legal resources for people facing family financial abuse, offered counseling for those struggling with toxic family dynamics, and created educational programs about recognizing and preventing financial manipulation. Every month brought new stories of people trapped in situations similar to mine, afraid to take action against family members who'd stolen from them. We gave them tools, support, and, most importantly, validation that their anger was justified. My pregnancy progressed smoothly, each ultrasound revealing a healthy baby girl who would never know the toxic favoritism that had poisoned my childhood. Daniel and I discussed extensively how we'd raise her, promising to celebrate achievements while teaching humility, to provide opportunities while instilling work ethic, to love unconditionally while maintaining boundaries. She would grow up seeing healthy relationships modeled daily, understanding that family meant more than shared DNA. As I put the finishing touches on the nursery, painting clouds on sky-blue walls, I reflected on the journey that brought me here. Family isn't about blood. It's about who stands by you when the world tries to tear you down. Daniel gave my parents 72 hours to return what they stole, but in truth, they'd already lost me 28 years ago when they chose favoritism over love. Sometimes the greatest gift toxic family can give you is showing their true colors, so you can finally be free. The money they stole was recovered, but more importantly, I'd recovered myself, building a life filled with chosen family who loved me not despite my success, but because of who I am. What would you do if your family stole your inheritance? Have you ever had to choose between blood relatives and your own well-being? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about overcoming family betrayal and finding your chosen family. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to stand up to toxic relatives. That blood doesn't give anyone the right to steal from you. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, you deserve to be celebrated, not tolerated. Until next time, stay strong and keep building the family you choose.